In the dim silence of an ancient village, as cold mist drifted across cracked earth, a widow stood before the elders who would decide her fate. Her husband had died only days earlier. His body had barely cooled, yet the judgment over her life had already begun. Neighbors watched from behind wooden screens. No one spoke. No one dared. In this place, a woman without a husband was believed to be a danger to the order of the household, the village, and even the spirits of the dead. Her grief was not the question. Her loyalty was. Her survival depended on rituals older than the written record, on rules shaped by fear, superstition, and a rigid world of hierarchy. Her voice held no weight. Her tears meant nothing. Her future would be carved by a system that demanded obedience even in the face of despair. You're watching Dark Inquest History. Subscribe to uncover more of the past the world tried to bury. This investigation reveals a truth long hidden behind polite histories and forgotten customs. It exposes a system that shaped the fate of millions of women across centuries. And today, we uncover the reality behind a practice almost erased from mainstream memory. This documentary explores the dark punishment for widows in ancient China no one talks about. The title you will hear throughout this narration is exactly this: The Dark Punishment for Widows in Ancient China No One Talks About. The world of ancient China was built upon layers of belief that defined a woman's purpose from birth to death. These beliefs came from philosophies that shaped the empire for 2,000 years. Confucian teachings stood at the center. They demanded order, stability, loyalty, and hierarchy. The family was the foundation of society. The husband was the head of the home. The widow, when her husband died, lost not only her companion, but also her legal protector, her social role, and her identity. She became a figure suspended between two worlds. She lived, yet she no longer belonged where she once stood. She was expected to maintain complete loyalty to a husband who no longer breathed. This expectation carried severe consequences. To understand the punishment, one must understand the culture that produced it. In early dynasties such as the Zhou, Han, and Tang, society placed heavy emphasis on the purity of the family line. A man's legacy depended on the strict behavior of the women in his home. Widows were seen as potential threats because they might remarry, shift property, weaken alliances, or disrupt ancestral worship. The ancestors of a family demanded stability. They demanded continuity. A widow's choices were therefore not her own. Her life became a matter of collective concern. Her body, her decisions, and her future served the needs of the lineage rather than her personal survival. The ideal widow was expected to remain faithful to the memory of her dead husband until her own final breath. This expectation grew stronger during the Song and Ming dynasties, when moral codes hardened. Scholars wrote books praising women who refused remarriage, even when it meant living in isolation or poverty. The empire honored widows who took vows of lifelong chastity. Some were praised for ending their own lives to prove devotion, though the court officially did not encourage such acts. Still, communities viewed these sacrifices as noble, and such stories spread widely. The pressure on ordinary widows grew heavier with each retelling. Beneath these ideals lay the reality faced by countless women. Many widows found themselves trapped in the homes of their in-laws, unable to return to their birth families. The law often treated them as property belonging to the husband's lineage. If they tried to leave, they could be forced back, shamed, or punished. If they sought remarriage, they risked losing their children, their possessions, and their honor. Villagers whispered that a widow who remarried brought misfortune. They feared she would offend the spirits of the dead. They believed she might disrupt the harmony of the ancestral shrine. These beliefs shaped her every step. The punishment for widows was not always a single act. It was a system of controls, pressures, and restrictions that closed around them. It began with forced mourning rituals. A widow was required to follow strict rules on dress, behavior, and isolation. She wore coarse garments for long periods. She avoided celebrations. She could be banned from social gatherings. Her food might be restricted, her movements monitored. She was expected to embody grief for months or even years, regardless of her personal feelings. The community watched her closely, searching for signs of disloyalty. As the days turned into seasons, the pressure intensified. In many regions, local customs demanded that widows serve their in-laws without complaint. They cooked, cleaned, tended the household, and cared for elders who often treated them with suspicion. Their presence was tolerated only because they were tied to the memory of the deceased. Their freedom was limited. Their voices remained unheard. Numerous records describe widows living in small side rooms, sleeping near altars, or confined to parts of the home meant to separate them from the world outside. The most feared aspect of widowhood was the expectation of lifelong chastity. Communities believed that a widow who remained loyal to her late husband brought honor to his ancestors and protection to the household. But a widow who remarried brought shame. In some areas, chastity was enforced through threats, public humiliation, and pressure from the village elders. Families feared losing property if a widow remarried. Children might lose inheritance rights. Brothers, cousins, and uncles had strong reasons to prevent a widow from forming a new union. Their interests outweighed her suffering. The story becomes darker as we examine the rise of the cult of widow chastity during the Ming and Qing dynasties. This era produced countless memorial arches built to honor widows who refused remarriage for life. These arches still stand in parts of China today. They are carved from stone. They praise women who remained loyal through silence, sacrifice, and hardship. Yet each arch represents a woman whose life was shaped by a system that valued her devotion more than her survival. Behind every inscription lies a story of fear, isolation, and pressure. Some widows were honored only after enduring decades of hardship. Others received recognition after taking their own lives, driven by unbearable expectations. Officials recorded their stories as examples for future generations, celebrating actions that, in truth, revealed a society built on rigid control. Historians now see these accounts as windows into a world where virtue was measured by suffering, and where a woman's grief became a public performance she could never escape. The pressure on young widows was even heavier. Marriages often occurred at early ages, especially in rural regions. A girl might be widowed before reaching adulthood. She would then be expected to uphold virtues she barely understood. Records show that young widows were closely monitored, often isolated, and sometimes physically restrained from leaving the household. Their future was shaped by people who valued reputation above compassion. In this world of rigid expectations, a widow's value was measured not by her character, her labor, or her dignity, but by her obedience to rules she never chose. Her suffering was interpreted as virtue. Her silence was praised as strength. Her isolation was called loyalty. Each year, the standards became harsher. Scholars, officials, and elders wrote manuals, poems, and household teachings that told widows how to behave. They urged them to demonstrate unwavering devotion to men who no longer lived. These ideals shaped the minds of entire villages. They created generations of women who felt bound to a code that demanded sacrifice without mercy. The most powerful force behind these punishments was the fear of social collapse. Ancient China believed that the family was the core of the empire. If a widow broke tradition, it was believed the household would weaken. If households weakened, the village would fall. If villages fell, the empire would crumble. This chain of fear justified every restriction. The suffering of the widow became a necessary cost to maintain order. Her rights were secondary. Her emotions were irrelevant. She became a symbol rather than a person. Confucian scholars wrote that a virtuous widow should remain in the home of her husband's family, even if her own relatives begged her to return. They argued that her place existed between the ancestral tablets and the duties she inherited. They taught that she should remain calm, humble, obedient, and withdrawn. If she stepped outside these expectations, they warned that spiritual imbalance might follow. Such ideas shaped how ordinary people judged widows. Suspicion grew around any woman who expressed the desire to remarry, travel, or regain independence. The roots of these customs stretched across dynasties. During the Han, laws granted families significant control over widows, especially regarding property. During the Tang, society saw more flexibility, yet the moral pressure still weighed heavily. By the Song dynasty, the intellectual class began shaping a stricter vision of womanly virtue. They taught that chastity was the highest honor a widow could embody. As these ideals spread through formal education, they became social expectation. And in the Ming and Qing eras, the cult of widow chastity rose to its greatest height. Shrines honored widows who resisted remarriage. Stone arches praised widows who died rather than break loyalty. County officials recorded their stories with admiration. Every record increased the pressure on the next generation. The harshest punishments often came not from official law, but from communities enforcing ideals out of fear of shame. A widow who refused to follow expectations could be isolated. She could be denied help from neighbors. Her belongings could be seized by in-laws. Her children could be taken from her and raised by others who believed they protected the family legacy. Such punishments crushed the spirit of countless women whose names appear only in fragments of local records. Their stories reveal a world defined by silent suffering. Some widows faced forced guardianship. This meant an elder in the husband's family controlled her actions, her movement, and even her daily schedule. They watched her closely, convinced that any choice she made outside tradition could stain the family honor. They expected her to live in a state of withdrawal, focusing only on duties such as weaving, tending altars, and caring for aging relatives. The more obedient she became, the more she symbolized proper virtue. The more she resisted, the harsher the scrutiny grew. One of the darkest forms of punishment involved the complete denial of remarriage. Although the law technically allowed widows to remarry in many periods of Chinese history, social expectations often made it impossible. Families feared losing property and losing authority. A remarried widow no longer belonged to her husband's lineage, which meant property she managed or land she cultivated could pass into another family. To prevent this, families restricted her movement, watched her activities, and controlled her interactions with others. Her life became a narrow path, confined within courtyard walls. Fear shaped every stage of widowhood. Elders feared scandal, villagers feared spirits, families feared losing wealth, officials feared disorder, and widows feared being blamed for events they did not cause. If a child became sick, people whispered about the widow's virtue. If a harvest failed, they murmured about imbalance in the family. If misfortune struck the village, some blamed widows for disrupting harmony. Such ideas were ancient, rooted in beliefs that women's emotions and actions could disturb the spiritual world. A widow carried the burden of these superstitions every day. As the years passed, widowhood became a prolonged test. Many widows lived in households where they had no authority. They depended on the goodwill of relatives who did not always care for them. They performed endless labor, from weaving silk to maintaining ancestral altars. They slept in small rooms, sometimes near shrines or storage areas reserved for rituals. They avoided conversation with outsiders, fearing rumors. Their lives unfolded in narrow spaces between tradition and obligation. Every breath they took reminded them that society valued their suffering more than their survival. The psychological weight of these customs was immense. Records from local governance reveal widows pleading for permission to return to their birth families, to see relatives, or to regain control over their children. Many requests were denied. Officials often sided with the husband's family, reinforcing the idea that widows were bound to the lineage they married into. These decisions strengthened the power of in-laws and deepened the widow's isolation. Some widows attempted to resist. They tried to leave their households. They sought support from relatives. They hid money to escape. But resistance was dangerous. A widow who left without permission risked being dragged back by force. She risked being accused of immoral behavior. She risked losing her children permanently. Her reputation could be destroyed with a few whispered accusations. A single rumor could mark her as disloyal, untrustworthy, or dishonorable. In a society built on reputation, these labels were devastating. Despite these pressures, widows formed a significant part of the population in many regions. Wars, diseases, and accidents claimed the lives of countless men. Some villages had entire clusters of widows living under strict rules. Their suffering became normalized. Their silence became expected. Their hardships were woven into the structure of daily life. Few questioned these customs. Most saw them as necessary, inevitable, and rooted in ancient wisdom. This environment shaped the destiny of millions of women across centuries. Their names rarely appear in official histories. Their voices remain largely lost. But their experiences left traces in county records, moral teachings, family genealogies, and legal documents. These traces reveal a world where widowhood was not a stage of grief, but a lifelong burden. It was a system that demanded control, sacrifice, and obedience. And it was a system that punished women for circumstances they did not choose. As the centuries unfolded, the expectations placed upon widows became woven deeper into the cultural fabric of daily life. The power of ancestral worship shaped every decision. Families believed that the spirits of their ancestors watched over them, guiding fortunes and punishing missteps. A widow who broke tradition was believed to anger these spirits. Such beliefs held extraordinary power over rural communities where the supernatural was not questioned, but assumed. This fear created an invisible cage around widows. They lived under the gaze of both the living and the dead. Even in periods when emperors attempted legal reform, social customs remained rigid. During the Qing dynasty, the state honored widows who upheld chastity and loyalty. Officials erected memorial arches for them, wrote detailed accounts praising their sacrifice, and encouraged communities to view them as moral models. These honors appear celebratory in historical texts, but behind the stone monuments lay stories of loss, isolation, and coercion. The empire rewarded suffering, and the reward itself increased the pressure on other widows to endure the same pain. These arches represented more than simple monuments. They symbolized a national endorsement of widow chastity. Families who received such arches gained prestige. Communities celebrated them. Officials considered them proof of moral excellence. This admiration created an unspoken competition among households. They sought recognition through the virtue of their widows. If a widow resisted remarriage, the family gained honor. If she struggled but remained loyal, they gained praise. If she died while protecting her virtue, they gained a monument. Every incentive favored the widow's suffering. None favored her healing. Historical records reveal that some widows were encouraged to live in near total seclusion. Their in-laws believed it prevented temptation and protected reputation. They lived in small rooms attached to courtyards, sometimes without sunlight for long hours of the day. Their tasks were restricted to domestic chores or religious duties. They could not attend festivals, weddings, or gatherings. Their presence was seen as a reminder of death, misfortune, and unresolved ties. The isolation became both a punishment and a tool of control. The burden extended beyond the widow herself. Her children, if she had any, were also shaped by these customs. Sons were often taken from their mother and raised by male relatives, reinforcing the line of the father. Daughters grew up watching their mother's confinement, learning early that their own future might carry the same fate. Widows rarely held authority within the household, even when they were mothers. Their voices were low in decisions about education, marriage, or inheritance. Their existence was tolerated only because they held a symbolic connection to the deceased. In some regions, communities enforced a practice known as widow surveillance. Neighbors and relatives observed the behavior of widows, reporting any perceived misconduct to elders. Small actions could be interpreted as signs of disloyalty. Leaving the home without permission, speaking to unrelated men, accepting small gifts, or even smiling too freely could spark suspicion. Once suspicion began, it was difficult to escape. Rumors could spread quickly in tightly knit communities. The widow often learned that silence and invisibility were her only defenses. The fear of public shame made resistance nearly impossible. In a world built on honor, shame was more frightening than legal punishment. A widow who brought shame upon a household could be treated harshly. She might be deprived of resources. She might be forced into harsher seclusion. She might be blamed for misfortunes she had no power to prevent. In extreme cases, she could be expelled from her home, left without shelter or protection. Such expulsions were rare but devastating. A woman without family support in ancient China faced a life of extreme hardship and vulnerability. Many widows found themselves caught in conflicts between families. The household she married into demanded loyalty. Her birth family might want to protect her, but feared conflict. Officials often sided with the husband's lineage because it was seen as the rightful authority. This left widows stranded between obligations they could not fulfill. Their suffering became a quiet struggle that played out within walls of homes that still stand today in rural China. In some areas, local customs required widows to observe extended periods of mourning that could last several years. During this time, they were forbidden to remarry, travel, or attend celebrations. They were expected to dedicate themselves to ritual duties, such as burning incense, maintaining the ancestral altar, and making offerings during seasonal ceremonies. These rituals reinforced the belief that the widow's primary obligation was to the dead, not the living. Her identity became tied to a man who could no longer provide for her or speak with her, yet who still dictated her fate. These customs reveal a deeper truth about the punishment faced by widows. It was not a single action, but a lifelong condition. It shaped their youth, their adulthood, and their final years. It created a cycle of fear, expectation, and control. Many widows lived long lives within this system, enduring decades of silence. Their resilience is rarely recorded. Their endurance is often overshadowed by the moral praise surrounding widow chastity. Economic hardship added another layer of suffering. Widows who lived in poor households faced severe burdens. Without the ability to remarry or seek work outside the home, many depended entirely on relatives who had little to spare. In some cases, widows became unpaid laborers, weaving textiles, tending animals, or performing repetitive chores from dawn until night. Their contribution kept households functioning, but they received no recognition or authority. Their lives passed in shadows behind courtyard walls. The relationship between widows and their in-laws was often shaped by tension. Some in-laws treated widows with suspicion, fearing that they might claim property or influence family decisions. Others used widows as sources of labor, assigning difficult tasks while denying them comfort or rest. The widow's status made her easy to exploit. She had no legal power, no independent income, and no allies within the household. She navigated a world where every movement could be judged and every decision could be criticized. Yet there were rare cases where widows gained respect within the household. Elderly widows sometimes rose to positions of influence after decades of service. But this respect came only after long years of obedience and silence. It was not given freely. It was earned through endurance and restraint. Even then, their authority was limited and often overshadowed by male relatives who held the final say in family matters. The stories of these widows offer insight into the deeper structure of ancient Chinese society. They reveal a world where stability outweighed compassion, where tradition outweighed individual rights, and where women bore the weight of maintaining honor. These customs shaped not only the widows themselves, but the entire social order. They became part of the way history remembered virtue, loyalty, and sacrifice. The final and darkest stage of the widow's punishment emerges when we examine the moments where these customs reached their peak intensity. This climax did not come from a single dynasty or a single region. It grew from centuries of layered beliefs. It took shape in eras where social order was fragile, where rulers feared rebellion, and where families clung to ancestral duty as their only source of security. In these moments, the pressure on widows became suffocating. Some widows faced relentless demands to prove their loyalty. In rare but deeply symbolic cases, widows were urged to demonstrate devotion through self-denial so extreme that their bodies weakened. Communities saw such suffering as the highest form of virtue, believing it purified the household and honored the dead. Officials documented these acts with praise, reinforcing the illusion that such sacrifice strengthened society. But behind each story lay a life shaped by obligation rather than choice. The darkest part of this history is not found in isolated events, but in the normalization of lifelong control. Widows were watched, judged, restricted, and confined, not because they had done wrong, but because society feared what they might do. Their existence represented a disruption to the expected harmony of the household. Their presence reminded families of death, instability, and unfinished duties to ancestors. To restore order, the community demanded obedience. It demanded silence. It demanded that widows embody ideals that weighed heavier than stone. This fear of disorder explains the severity of their treatment. Ancient China was deeply concerned with maintaining balance. Every household was a small universe connected to the spiritual world. Ancestors were believed to influence good harvest, good health, and prosperity. A widow who broke tradition threatened to disturb this spiritual balance. Such fears justified even the harshest restrictions. They allowed families to control widows in ways they believed protected the entire lineage. They allowed communities to ignore the suffering of women who had already endured loss. The climax of the widow's punishment becomes clear when we consider the emotional isolation imposed upon them. A widow was expected to live with her grief in silence. She was not encouraged to heal, to rebuild her life, or to seek comfort. Instead, she was expected to transform grief into service. Her mourning became a permanent identity. Her sorrow became a public duty. The deeper her suffering, the stronger her virtue appeared in the eyes of the community. Such expectations shaped thousands of lives. As we move into the aftermath of this long history, we see how these customs slowly shifted. The late Qing dynasty and early Republican era introduced new influences. Western ideas, internal reforms, and changing social values challenged long-standing traditions. Intellectuals began to question the cult of widow chastity. They argued that such customs harmed society by trapping women in despair. Reformers wrote essays condemning the pressure placed on widows. They spoke of the need for women's education, legal rights, and greater independence. These ideas spread gradually. By the early 20th century, many of the strictest customs began to fade. Memorial arches still stood, but they represented a past the new era sought to leave behind. Some communities continued to uphold old traditions, but the national conversation changed. Laws shifted, attitudes shifted. Widows gained more freedom to remarry, to earn income, and to live independently. But the echoes of the past did not disappear overnight. Generations of women still felt the weight of old expectations. The memory of suffering lingered in family stories, village tales, and cultural practices. Even today, these histories influence how people understand widowhood, family loyalty, and obligation. The arches built for widows still stand in some regions, reminders of a world where suffering was praised as virtue. They are silent monuments to countless women whose lives were shaped by forces beyond their control. Many of their names are lost. Their stories survive only in fragments, but their experiences remain part of the larger history of China, revealing how deeply society can shape the lives of individuals. This long history forces us to confront a powerful truth. The darkest punishments are often those that become invisible through routine. The widows of ancient China lived in a world where silence was expected, where suffering was normalized, and where duty overshadowed humanity. Their lives remind us how fear, tradition, and superstition can shape entire cultures. They show how social systems can control individuals not through force alone, but through expectations passed down over generations. The legacy of these widows is not one of weakness, but of endurance. They survived in the shadows of ancestral halls, through years of isolation, and within the walls of households that valued duty above personal freedom. Their stories reveal a resilience that history rarely acknowledges. Their lives, though controlled by systems they did not choose, demonstrate the quiet strength of those who endure hardship without recognition. As this investigation closes, the memory of these women stands as a solemn reminder of the cost of rigid tradition. Their stories deserve to be remembered, not as examples of virtue, but as testimonies of endurance in the face of overwhelming pressure. Their experiences expose the hidden darkness behind customs often described with honor and respect. They reveal the human cost behind ideals carved into stone arches and written into moral teachings. This has been Dark Inquest History. Subscribe for the next descent into the past.